Reggie Davis. He is an airline pilot for the U.S. Airways, based in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, flying the Embracer 190 and is a FAA Gold Seal certified flight instructor. He retired in 1999 from the United States Navy Air Reserve with the rank of commander after a 21-year career serving as an aeronautical engineering duty officer, and has over 6,000 flight hours in both military and civilian aircraft. He also held positions in engineering, sales, marketing, and management for Bell South, IBM, and Equifax. Mr. Davis has a Bachelor of Science degree in mechanical engineering from Tuskegee University and a Master of Arts degree in business management from Central Michigan University. And before I welcome him, I just want anyone who is giving a speech from the manual, please give it to your evaluator so they can give you credit for your speech. Reggie, now Reggie has been a member of Tampa Toastmasters since March 2010 and is presenting project number 3, Getting to the Point, continuing the theme on military flying. The title of his speech is Dogfighting, the Fighter Pilot's Trade. Let me welcome Reggie Davis.
Madam Toastmasters and welcome guests. Last week we talked about landing and taking off of aircraft carriers, and continuing with that theme, I'd like to talk with you today about dogfighting, the fighter pilot's trade. And what I'll ask you to do, again, if you can, how many of you, raise your hands, saw the movie Top Gun? Okay. Many of you may remember the scenes at the end of the movie, all of the chaos of all the airplanes flying around the sky, and wondering, how do you manage to that situation? Well, I'd like to try to help you get a sense of what that's like. First of all, the formal term for dogfighting, which is a colloquial term, is in the military, in both the Air Force and the Navy, we call it air combat maneuvering. That's the formal military term. But we call it dogfighting because of the way dogs fight. And the nature of a dogfight is that when dogs come together to fight, they attack, they defend against an attack, they counterattack, and then they start the process over again. They come apart, and then they come back again to try to gain the advantage. And so that's what dogfighting is, and that's why we use the term, because in effect that's what happens when we're flying and we do that. Now, when we think about the dogfighting, understand that it is both art and science. I mean, there are rules by which we have to be able to maneuver our airplane to be able to gain the advantage against an opponent that we're flying against. There are aeronautical principles that we have to utilize, scientific principles, but there's also just plain seat of the pants flying and gut feel for how you maneuver the airplane so that you can get in a position to be able to defeat an enemy. And so when we look at why do we dogfight, what is the reason, how do we come about that process? Well, the reason why is because typically when you're engaged in conflict, one of the things that we will do, or any military force will do, is attack a target with aircraft. And those aircraft will, most of the time, they'll have bombs, missiles, by which they will go and attack a target. And of course, what the enemy is going to want to do is what? Defend against your attack of their target. And so typically what we call the strike package, those aircraft, they're loaded up with all of these bombs, and therefore they have a difficult time defending themselves against the enemy who is saying, no, we want to shoot those aircraft down. So what you have are what we call the fighter escort. We escort the strike package to the target area so that we can defend them and keep the enemy aircraft from shooting them down. That is typically the setup for the air-to-air engagement and why that happens. Now, there are some rules by which we have to operate when we're talking about air combat maneuvering or dogfighting. The first rule is see them before they see you. The second rule is, as much as possible, never let them get around to your 6 o'clock position or directly behind you. Because when they can get behind you, then they can either fire a missile at you or they can shoot a cannon at you and shoot you down. This is a very, very demanding, disadvantageous way to fight. The fact of the matter is, it's kind of like what we call trying to have a knife fight in a phone booth. Okay, it is very demanding for reasons that I'll share with you in a moment. And so, with those rules in mind, when you come into an engagement, that's where all of the chaos starts. All of the aircraft maneuvering you see is to do one thing: get in a position to shoot the other guy down. Okay, it's a very deadly engagement because winning or losing means living or dying. It's just that simple. And so what ends up happening is that when we start out in an engagement, the first thing we want to do is, as I said, rule number one, see them before they sees you. So fortunately, we have very powerful radars that can look out in a great distance, and we can see other targets out there. But what ends up happening is many times you'll have friendly aircraft out ahead of your strike group, and therefore, even though I might be able to see an enemy target, I never shoot a missile blindly when there's a friendly in front of me. So what ends up happening is, instead of being able to just sit on my radar and kind of like a video game, just shoot the guy and see him disappear, I now have to put eyes on. I've got to visualize my target. Well, if I can see him, guess what? He can see me. And so it's at that point is where the engagement starts. Because when you get close enough to see, then that's when the maneuvering starts. That's when the hassle starts. So what ends up happening is the closer we get, we go up on our speed, because what it is that we are managing in that environment is what we call energy maneuverability. You heard us talk about last week, speed is life. The one thing you don't want to do is get slow, bleed off energy, bleed off airspeed, because at that point I can't maneuver, and if I'm slow, I can't escape if I need to. And so what ends up happening is that many times when we close with the enemy, we're closing at 1,500, 1,600, 1,700 miles per hour closure rate. And it's amazing how you'll look out in the distance, you don't see anything. You might just see a silver speck, a black dot. All of a sudden, it's passing you head to head. And so as you can recall from Top Gun, you saw airplanes whizzing by. Well, that's exactly what happens. And at that point, fight's on. And what you're trying to do is maneuver your aircraft in a position to be able to shoot this guy down, keep this guy off of me from getting on my position. And so I'm turning very, very hard. I'm pulling a lot of G's, trying to get my aircraft turned around on this guy so that I can shoot him, or if I see that someone is trying to track me, I'm maneuvering very, very hard to keep him off of my tail. And so we engage, we fight till either someone is shot down, or if one of us is running out of fuel, what we will try to do is exit the fight by outrunning the opponent, because if you run out of fuel, that's a win for the other side. So you continue to do that until you either shoot somebody down or you can disengage from the fight. And so hopefully what you got a sense is a little bit about what air combat maneuvering is about how it comes about, and why we go about doing that. Thank you very much.